Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the 2021 theme for International Day of Peace, Recovering Better for an Equitable and Sustainable World, is grounded in an entrenched philosophy of intra- and intergenerational responsibility and equity, reminding us all of the need to create a resilient global community that is inclusive, just, and fair in the post-COVID-19 era. There's a growing panoply of man's inhumanity to man manifesting itself every and anywhere on the global front, whether it be obscene levels of crime in burgeoning democracies, and especially in small island development states, or bold yet cowardly violations of basic human rights in authoritarian regimes. I ponder on what is taking place in Myanmar, the atrocities in Ethiopia and South Sudan, and the social maelstrom in Afghanistan. What of the inalienable rights of womanhood in societies where men can do no wrong and women are forced to become the handmaidens of cruel men steeped in backward philosophies? We must, as a people, aspire to ensure proper and ethical standards of conduct and behavior towards each other, regardless of race, gender, status, or geography. Leveraging the power of youth in creating a peaceful, equitable, and sustainable world begins in the classrooms of the world. Pedagogy must therefore not divorce itself from the responsibility and duty of strengthening and promoting the ideals and benefits of peace through development. Part of that fix must by extension include in the teaching syllabus mediation and alternative dispute resolution techniques. Globally, we have not done well in resolving disputes, individually and collectively. Invariably, school systems must be in the business of creating global villages with a vested interest in impacting global issues and problems, and also in the promotion of sustainable world peace as a way of life. Part of that pedagogic process is ensuring that children stay on course, on that straight and narrow path, that dropping out of school must never be an option, and as important, ensuring the higher education of quality becomes more accessible, available, affordable to every young man and woman. We must not be in the business of fixing broken men or running after the proverbial bolted horse. As Frederick Douglass, the great American essayist, opined, and I quote, "It is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men," end of quote. Holistic education must be the engine of social transformation, sustainable development, peace, and security. The student nurtured today on the bedrock of conscience can be a conduit and disseminator of peace tomorrow, when as an executive, technocrat, and or leader, he or she strides the corridors of power. We will hence find a new dawn, create a new era, where service leadership grounded in a sustaining culture of peace will reign over the regressive power leadership presently in vogue. Ladies and gentlemen, we need unprecedented global solidarity on climate emergency, not look-good governance that passes enabling legislation in the parliaments of the world without creating the enabling environment for effective, comprehensive, and real-time implementation. Filibustering and chest-thumping without action are useless and insulting to generations to come. There is a sense of hesitancy in governance to bite the bullet at the expense of the niceties of a now that breeds indifference and apathy to the climate catastrophe. Only last week, the UN Climate Code Red report indicated that instead of emissions going down by 1.5% as envisaged by the Paris Agreement, it may rise to 3% by 2045. We talk peace as we breed battles and wars in the future by our environmental misfeasance and brutal attack on the ecosystems of the world, diminishing world water resources, disrupting the supply chain, not to mention the crises of air pollution, lakes and rivers running dry, oceans challenging the very existence of small island developing states, unheralded drought, hurricanes, and monstrous flooding. Post-COVID-19, we need more than ever ocean governance and its consequent oversight of spatial areas, connectivity to the ocean's sustainable needs, and regenerative possibilities controlled by way of global environmental guidance and service. As a means of protecting our oceans and addressing the egregious acts of impunity against our environment, especially as it pertains to small island development states, I wish to propose once more that world leaders and citizens advocate for and support the establishment of an environmental court. That is, the International Environmental Court, IEC, without prejudice to the mandates of existing institutions. The International Environmental Court will be telling violators of environmental impunity, you can run, but you cannot hide.
The United Nations has stated matter-of-factly, and I quote, "Women leadership and participation in peace building is prerequisite for the fulfillment of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development." In other words, without women's participation, we will not achieve lasting peace. And without the stability of peace, we will not achieve sustainable development, end quote. In this regard, I am deeply disturbed by the derailment of the basic internationally accepted rights of women in Afghanistan. Only a few days ago, the Afghan authorities banned women from their jobs if there is a man to fill the post. Afghan women fought for equality of treatment and opportunity by educating themselves, by demanding presence in governance and institutions, by forging an independent spirit and self-confidence, by realizing personal and collective dreams and ambitions, confidence, by being somebody, and by being, most of all, nobody's chattel. How can we forget the savage demise of a woman, Najia, from a small village in North Afghanistan, a loving mother who pleaded her poverty in light of the demands of 15 fighters to cook for them. She was beaten to death and her home blown up with a grenade. In the midst of it all, women demonstrating for their God-given rights have been beaten mercilessly. The country's women's cricket team will no longer play cricket, and Afghan universities will be segregated by gender. Women empowerment, development, peace, and security are interconnected and intertwined inextricably. The UN has recognized that symbiotic relationship as being integral to any peace process in times of conflict and in cultivating a culture of peace. Resolution 1325 of the UN Security Council has recognized the role of women in advancing social change, curtailing conflict and turmoil by their capacity and competence to build bridges, appeasing warring conflict, and being a balm to internecine conflict. As we watch with horror the continued civil unrest in places like Yemen, the obscene kidnappings of young girls in Nigeria, and the perennial violence, for example, in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, and most recently, the atrocities being committed in Myanmar and Ethiopia, it certainly makes us wonder whether there is a dismantling of Resolution 1325 taking place through sheer institutional indifference, apathy, or by governmental design. The African continent by its Women's Agenda 2063 has given credence to the role of women in economic development, peace, and security. As a world post-COVID-19, what are we doing to ensure the genuine inclusion of women on matters of economics globally? Are we satisfied with our progress as highlighted in global metrics? World leaders need to institutionalize equitable access to opportunity for women in the spheres of business, finance, and entrepreneurship to sustain progressive economic development. In 2018, at the World Trade Organization Buenos Aires Declaration on Trade and Women's Economic Empowerment, it was highlighted that steps to empower women economically are happening slowly, but not systematically. In the area of global trade, we have made some small progress in helping women enter global markets, either directly or as part of global supply chains. Women are not less capable of exporting. Instead, they often lack access to information, finance, and technology. The problem is not that the exporter is female, but that the system is not attuned to ensuring women have the same access to these opportunities as men. Finally, I have noticed that the COVID-19 pandemic economic recovery teams in most countries are not inclusive enough, even discriminatory, for women, and young people are not sufficiently represented. These economic recovery teams, by their exclusionary practices, have demonstrated an inability to craft realistic economic and recovery strategies for the short to medium term. Economic recovery teams must be inclusive to ensure a peaceful, equitable, and sustainable world in the post-COVID-19 era. I thank you.